week's episode of Assassination Classroom, the students of Class 3E are continuing to fight against a group of very dangerous adults. And you know what? That's pretty freaking cool. It's totally against the rules, and any real teacher in their right mind would never allow this to happen, but then again, their teacher is not Koro-sensei. This week's episode was divided into two chunks, the students fighting against these two different assassins, or would-be assassins, these guys working as guards. The first guy goes by the name of Gastro. He's that one creepy guy who's completely obsessed with tasting the barrel of his gun. We get to learn a little bit more about him this week, how he's a trained soldier, and how he's completely obsessed with the taste of all his own pistols, and he uses his memory abilities to try and take out the students of Class 3E, but this doesn't work at all, because Koro-sensei actually uses his students like a freaking chessboard. He moves them around this big auditorium room, and he relies on both Chiba and Ayame to end up taking him out in this really awesome way, where they actually end up shooting all of these massive lights, they end up slamming right into him, and then Ayame actually shoots the gun right out of his hand. They tie him up, and that's the end of Gastro. I honestly thought that it was going to go in a much darker direction at this point of the episode, but they're actually saving that for the very end. That's when we are formally introduced to the leader of this organization, and big spoiler warning, it's actually the return of Takaoka. This was something that I didn't see coming until I finally started hearing his voice, and they did a really great job of actually not making you realize who it was, because at first I always thought this guy was going to have scars all over his face. Actually, he's just incessantly scratching his face, and that's what gives him this brand new appearance. And if you thought he was crazy before, holy shit! Bastard just ended up taking his crazy pills. He looks insane in this week's episode, and he's going to some extreme disturbing lengths in order to get what he wants, and that's Koro-sensei, and he wants him dead. But he also wants his pride back. You see, he wants to get his revenge against Nagisa, because Nagisa made him look like a bitch before, and he's not going to go out like that, and he doesn't want to listen to his army buddies who are constantly making fun of him, so he has these big plans. First, he was originally going to kidnap Kayano and sort of use her as bait. He was going to put Koro-sensei right next to her in this tub full of anti-Koro-sensei BBs, and the explosion would go off, actually killing her, which would actually make Koro-sensei not do that because he doesn't want to hurt his students. He really thought this out. But his next big plan is that he's going to have a duel of sorts with Nagisa, where they're at the top of this big heliport at the top of the massive hotel. He destroys this one bridge which separates him from the other students, and he makes Nagisa literally get on his hands and knees begging for forgiveness, and then as soon as that's done, he throws the cure into the air and ends up blowing all of it up. It's at this moment that you start to hear Nagisa's heartbeat getting steadily faster. He picks up the knife, and I was just waiting for him to go Super Saiyan this entire time. It's only a matter of time before he goes really crazy, and considering that he's like the #1 assassin aside from Koro-sensei in the actual school, I really can't wait to see what he's capable of, although I have a feeling that Karasuma or maybe even Koro-sensei will somehow come back and end up helping him, because this could really go into some dark territory right here, especially with the look that Nagisa has at the end when he just looks completely batshit insane with his eyes shaking and of course the knife in his hand. So I really can't wait to see how they're going to handle it in the next episode. So what's the rundown on this week's episode of Assassination Classroom? This was a really interesting arc if this is the way they're going to wrap it up. It really got crazy when they finally decided to reintroduce Takaoka, who I really didn't see him returning. I thought he was going to be sort of like a one-shot thing, especially because of his exit. Like, when he was defeated in his episode, he ran away like a little bitch with his freaking tail between his legs. I didn't imagine he would come up with such an elaborate plan just to get revenge against Nagisa. And the amount of underhandedness at making him get on his knees, promising him the cure, and then throwing it was definitely one of the most tense scenes that I've seen from the entire series. I almost wanted to hope that Karma was going to get involved as well, because next to Nagisa, Karma is definitely the one who has a little bit more muscle and a little more skill behind him, and I thought that would have been really cool. There's also this other subplot where the one student of Terasaka seems to have come down with that virus as well, and little by little, he's starting to get sicker, and this is, of course, just increasing the tension not only for Nagisa, but for the rest of the students as well. On the technical side of things, this week's episode looked really good and was incredibly atmospheric, and they made great use of their setting. The opening battle scene in the auditorium was great, especially when Gastro used all those lights to blind everyone. It just added a lot of atmosphere, and I love how Koro-sensei was trying to trick him by constantly giving them different nicknames, just talking about like what they look like, general, what their actual hobbies are, some of which are very funny reveals, and then Gastro just ends up shooting all over the place and ends up getting his ass kicked But Takaoka is the real star of this week's episode. He is such a fantastic villain, and so different from some of the other villains that we've seen from the show. You really can't compare him to the principal of the school, Asano, whatsoever. They're very different types of beasts, and it's true that, you know, this guy is just insane. I especially love that he tries to, like, cover that up, mentioning how incredibly sane he actually is, but the lengths that he's going to, how he's actually creating this, like, big terrorist plot, destroying things in air, like, he's going to cause a lot of attention, and I guess you could argue that this is all in the vein of trying to save the world from Koro-sensei and what he's really trying to do, but the fact of the matter is, Koro-sensei is probably not going to destroy the world, and there's another trick here that we just don't know about yet. All I know is, I can't wait to see the next episode. Hopefully Nagisa will actually get to fight against Takaoka, and we'll get some cool action from them. Maybe the other students will join in. Maybe there will be another twist, because we only have a couple more episodes before we get to the finale of Assassination Classroom, Season 1. So, on the technical side of things, this week's episode looked good. It was really funny. It had some amazing action and a lot of tension at the very end of this week's episode. And it's another one of those episodes, too, where, like, it just flies right by. Like, I honestly thought we were going to get a big action scene at the end, and before you know it, boom! To be continued, see you next week. And that was really good about this episode. They're doing a great job of building up this finale. So I'm going to give this week's episode right here a 4 out of 5. Check it out, Ass Class fans. It was a pretty fantastic episode. So, I like this one a lot. I loved seeing the return of Takaoka. He's an amazing villain. But what about you guys? Were you shocked by the turn of events in this week's episode? What do you want to see in the next one? Do you think Nagisa's going to fight against him? And what do you want to see from the finale of the first season of Assassination Classroom? Please tell me in the comment section below. Thank you guys for watching my review. Make sure to like it and share it with all of your friends. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and to follow us on social media. Thank you guys again for watching, and as always, stay dandy, baby!